I'm still alive, and I've traveled around the United States quite a bit. I've been to 38 states, the ones on screen. And today I want to go through all the states I've been to and share what I've done in each one. This video is also partially just for me because I don't always remember what I've done in each state, and this feels like a good way to document that. Some of the states we've just driven through and others we've been to plenty of times. Starting off with Alabama, where we went to Mobile, the hometown of the creator of Phineas and Ferb, Dan Povenmire, and I think we saw like a Revolutionary War fort there. Next up is Arizona, where we've been to the Grand Canyon twice. First to go to the Skywalk, and second to get the better view, which officially means that my brother Nate and I went from being Nate Scott Murphy to Nate Scott Skywalker. Not as cool as the mysterious other Murphy, Luke, who you know from not being a part of this channel, who became Luke Skywalker. Then in Arkansas, we went to the only public diamond mine in the United States. After hours of rummaging through the dirt, we found absolutely nothing, and that might be the hottest and sweatiest I have ever been. California is probably the state I've been to the most. Outside of our yearly trips to Disneyland, we've been to plenty of California beach towns and Muir Woods. Next up, we took a road trip through Colorado and saw the beautiful mountains. We also went to a cool theme park on top of a mountain. Then we went to Aspen, where I had one of the best meals of my life at a restaurant called Meat and Cheese. In Georgia, we went to Atlanta and we saw the aquarium there, which I actually made a video about. We also went to Savannah, Georgia and ate at this restaurant frequented by pirates a couple hundred years ago, and that's where this video was filmed. My family has been to Hawaii 3 times, but I don't remember the first one because I was 2. The second time I was in 6th grade and we went to the island Oahu for 5 days, then Maui for 4. And finally, 2 summers ago, we went to a resort called Turtle Bay in Oahu, which is where our channel profile picture is from. We just sort of drove through Idaho on some of our road trips. I don't even think we stopped. I still count that as going to the state because we were there for like an hour. The only thing I really don't count is just going to an airport. Then for Illinois, we've been to Chicago plenty of times. I think we also went to Abraham Lincoln's house at some point. I think we just passed through Indiana when we were leaving Chicago, and I think we were also in Indianapolis at some point. In Iowa, we went to Des Moines, which I barely remember, but one weirdly specific thing I do remember is in Kansas. I remembered Kansas just being endless wheat fields, but we stopped at this one town called Cocker City. We saw the world's largest ball of twine there, but I just remember how sad Cocker City seemed. Everything closed at like noon, and it just seemed like a dying town. I wish we could have Radiator Springs it, but unfortunately our Toyota wasn't really Lightning McQueen. Next up, in Kentucky, we went to Louisville and saw where the Kentucky Derby is held. We went to Louisiana to see New Orleans. Among other things, we went to the aquarium there. I told you I love aquariums, and they actually had gluten-free pizza. As someone with an allergy to gluten, that was very unexpected, and it definitely added bonus points to the entire trip. Continuing, we briefly drove through Maryland on our trip to Washington, D.C. My parents and I recently went to Massachusetts to see Boston and Salem. Salem had this weird witch trials museum, which is what the town is famous for, that had kind of weird messaging. However, I did learn that most of the people murdered in the Salem witch trials had their sentences reversed in the late 1700s. However, some of them weren't reversed until the early 2000s, and the last one was reversed in 2022. Why did it take so long? And who looked at the records in the late 1700s and decided to reverse some of the sentences, but not others? It was crazy. Anyway, in Michigan, we went to the beach by one of the lakes. We drove through Minnesota, and I think we saw a lake there as well. One lake down, only 11,841 to go until we've seen all of the ones in Minnesota. In Mississippi, we went to Biloxi, a cool mining town. In Missouri, we went to St. Louis and saw the Arch. We also went into it, and I remember there being a kind of claustrophobic elevator to get you to the top. We drove through Montana, where I'm convinced we ran into some sort of room of requirement. It was the middle of the day, and we'd been driving for hours with hours more until our destination. It was in the middle of nowhere, and this area of the country had not had historically good gluten-free options. But then we came into view of this random sandwich shop. It was the only food we had seen in miles, so our parents said we would go in and Nate and I would just have to get chips or something. But for some reason, this random Montana restaurant had gluten-free bread, just out in the middle of nowhere. We ate there, got back on the road, and we're all convinced that that place just appeared specifically for us. In Nebraska, we went to Omaha and met Omar the Bridge Troll. We also went to this cool museum that was built over the highway in Kearney, Nebraska. It went through all the different ways people had crossed the country throughout the years, and it was very cool. Definitely worth a stop if you're ever in the area. We've been to Las Vegas, Nevada twice, and we've stayed at the Bellagio and the Venetian hotels. I remember both being very cool. We drove through New Jersey once, I don't specifically remember when. We've driven through New Mexico a couple times, but I remember staying in the capital, Santa Fe. We've also been to New York many times, but I think we've always stayed in New York City or Long Island. We've seen almost all the sites there, but we've never actually been to the Statue of Liberty. We drove through Ohio on another one of those road trips. We went to Oklahoma City, which is the easiest state capital to remember, and also a very nice place. It was so pleasant, and it kind of surprised me how pretty it was. We went to Portland, Oregon, and drove through some of the countryside. Portland was so rainy, which I didn't really mind, but it was like a constant downpour. In Pennsylvania, we visited some family who used to live there and got to ride our grandmother's old horse. We went to South Carolina pretty recently and saw the beautiful town of Charleston. We also saw Fort Sumter, which while very interesting, was a little bit smaller than I expected. In South Dakota, we saw the Corn Palace, which yes is a real thing, as well as Mount Rushmore. In Tennessee, we went to Memphis and then Nashville on a separate trip. The night we arrived in Nashville, everywhere was blasting super loud country music. But then the next morning, we saw a replica of the Parthenon from Athens, and I believe it was actually featured in a Percy Jackson movie. In Texas, we've been to a couple places, but most noticeably this steakhouse in Amarillo. They had this thing, if you ate a 72-ounce steak plus a bunch of sides, you would get it for free. We saw a guy doing it while we were there, but that was not the most interesting part. We learned about this 100-pound woman who did the challenge 3 times in a row and set the 3 fastest times. And all of her runs were around 7 minutes. She had to go to the hospital after doing it, but that is an insane run. In Utah, we went to Salt Lake City, hometown of the host of Jeopardy, Ken Jennings. But unfortunately, I remember the actual Salt Lake being kind of gross. In Virginia, we visited some family friends, but mostly just drove through. We went to Madison, Wisconsin, which I remember being pretty nice. In Wyoming, we went to Yellowstone. We went to the Old Faithful Geyser, and I remember they gave us a map at the start. On the map, they had a dozen or so animals that you were supposed to look out for and try to spot. Nate and I were like 7 and 9 at the time, and we immediately started pointing to like random piles of leaves and being like, oh look, it's a yellow-bellied marmot. I think we actually saw maybe one of those animals. And I know this last one's not a state, but in Washington, D.C., we stole the Declaration of Independence. And that's what I've done in every state in the U.S. There are 12 states I haven't been to, but it's soon to be 11. On the day this video is uploaded, I'll be traveling to Alaska for a week-long cruise. Which, yes, does mean I have to pre-record 9 videos so I don't miss out on daily uploading. Feel free to still leave comments, by the way. I'll get to as many as I can before I leave, but then I'll just get them a little bit late when I get back. But anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and Nate, I'll see you tomorrow.